So you've been asking, and tonight we're gonna do it. I'm gonna make bread and hamburger buns and show you how easy it is. So the first thing we're gonna do, and I'm gonna post the recipe below. I am actually doubling this recipe, so you'll see me put a lot more than what you're thinking I ought to put in, but that's okay. You'll see what it looks like in this Bosch mixer doubled, okay? So the first thing we're gonna do is put our milk and water in. I do half milk, half water. If you don't want to put milk in, that's fine. You can use all water. It'll be good. I just find that it seems like the milk helps the flour absorb faster. So it just turns, to me, the dough just turns out better, and the bread actually is a little bit softer. So I've got half milk, half water. I'm gonna pour in the mixer. And this is the Bosch Universal Mixer. You can do this in the Nutrimilk Artiste mixer. It'll do just the same. The difference in the two mixers is the Artiste doesn't have quite as much horsepower, but it still has plenty amount of strength to do this recipe, and it doesn't have this little thing here where you can attach a blender if you want, and I think there's some other attachments you can do, but right now we're worried about bread making, right? So we're not going to worry about that. So we've added our milk and our water, and now we're going to add about half of the amount of flour. And this is not exact. You don't have to be exact on this. It's okay. I've done it sometimes with less and sometimes with a little more, and it's not finicky. The bread dough's not finicky. So when you mill your flour in your Nutrimilk Classic grain mill, this pastry brush is very handy because flour gets on the top here. So you just brush it down in here, and if there's flour, there'll be some flour around the edge, that's fine. Let me give you a tip. Don't wash that off and get it all real clean, because that flour actually helps it make it easy to get on and off. So this little cup here though, we're gonna take out, and it just snaps off, and it has some flour in it. That's the real fine flour. I'm gonna dump it right in there. And then there's a little bit of flour left here. I'm gonna brush that off as well into there. And then, very important part, you snap this back on. And if you don't snap it back on, you're in trouble next time you mill. Just believe me. Okay, so we have put our milk and water. Now I'm gonna do about half of this flour, or maybe a little less. Anyway, we're gonna make a sponge is what we're gonna do. And you'll see what that looks like in just a second. So I'm gonna put, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'm gonna do about 5 and a half. Now remember, I'm doubling this, okay? So you won't, unless you're doubling this recipe, you won't be doing that much. Now we're gonna use our yeast. This is instant yeast, and I use the SAF, S-A-F, instant yeast in the red label, and it comes vacuum packed, and then I just put it in this little container and keep it in my freezer so it stays good. So, go put my yeast in here. And I'm gonna put that back in the freezer. Now I'm gonna put the lid, put the lid on. Just because I don't want flour flying anywhere. And I'm gonna turn on speed 1. Scrape. There's a little bit of flour on the side here. And that looks kind of like thick pancake batter. I'm gonna do it a little bit more because there's some dry flour in there, so let's go. Okay, now I am going to cover this and let this set. And this is warm. It had the warm milk in it, or milk and water, and the flour's a little bit warm. So that yeast going into that warmth, it's gonna like it a lot. So I'm gonna set my timer on my watch for 20 minutes. And I'm gonna just let that set, become a sponge. And so, in case you don't know, if you've not made bread with fresh milled flour before, since we're making bread, we use hard flour. There's 2 kinds of flour. There's hard and soft, and the hard flour is what makes all yeasted items. So think bread, think pizza dough, sourdough. So that's where you would use the hard. The soft flour is what you're going to use for biscuits, pancakes, muffins, cakes, cookies, think pastries, okay? Because soft flour is a lighter flour. When it mills up, it is so fine, and it's just a lighter flour, and it makes your baked goods just a better quality, a little bit lighter texture than if you use the hard flour. Now, I'm sure in the olden days, they probably used whatever flour they had on hand. So probably if they had the hard flour, they probably still made their biscuits and cakes and all that with the hard wheat. And you know what? And they just worked with it. And so I'm sure you probably can. Now, I do know you cannot use soft wheat or soft flour to make bread. It does not have enough protein in it to rise, so you don't do that. So I think I needed to make sure you knew that. Now, some of you may be watching this and you've never heard of fresh milled flour, and you're going, what is that? So fresh milled flour is where I take, and people that do this, we take wheat berries, that's what they're called. They're the little kernels of wheat, and we put them in our home mill, and we mill it into flour. And it usually doesn't take more than a couple minutes. And when you do that, you retain all the nutrition that is in that flour. Did you know that the wheat berry has 40 of the 44 nutrients we need to live? So it is high nutrition when it's in its whole form. And so the difference, you may go, well, there's flour in the store. What's the difference? So the flour in the store, if you'll look at this flour, I'll see if you can see it. Do you see it's kind of off colored? So it's it's got some browns in it, and it's not white. And that's because it has the wheat germ in it. That is a very high source of vitamin E, and it's got the bran in it. Now, the bran, a lot of people just automatically think fiber, and so yay fiber, but the bran also has a lot of nutrients like magnesium and other things like that in the bran. And so when you have commercial flour, when they mill it, they sift out all the bran, all the wheat germ, and they remove they only leave about 20% of the nutrition that was in the wheat. And here we had basically a little over 90% of what we need to live. So then after they sift that out, they have to put things in there to preserve it. They bleach it. And so all of those things, not only does it strip nutrients out, but our bodies weren't made for that kind of flour. And so in today's world, we have lots of people that have gluten sensitivities, or you know, they're allergic to so many food allergies. A lot of that is because our food is not, we're not getting the food where our bodies are intended to get. So many people, believe it or not, many people that are gluten sensitive can actually eat bread and other baked goods made with freshly milled flour, just simply because it has the whole nutrition, not just the tiny part left that, you know, when God designed the wheat berry, it was for the whole, we were to eat the whole thing, not just take out the middle part. It was supposed to be all together. It all works synergistically in our bodies. So if you struggle with gluten sensitivities, I invite you to just try. I've heard so many stories. I invite you to try some fresh milled flour bread, okay? I have heard so many testimonies of people that had gone gluten-free for 10, 12 years. And yes, their body didn't react and didn't have all the sickness that they had had, but that didn't mean they were healthy. They had other issues still going on, because actually a lot of gluten-free foods, it's not full of nutrition. I mean, it doesn't have gluten in it, but that doesn't mean that it's a nutrient dense food. So this flour is nutrient dense. That's why in Bible days, when Jesus said he was the bread of life, the people there totally got it, because they knew they could actually live on bread. Today, we would die on the bread in the grocery stores. So this is like a whole different bird. So anyway, just a little bit of info. I don't want to blow your brains too much. If you are diabetic, or if you are pre-diabetic and you have to watch carbs just for the glycemic index, I will let you know that store-bought flour, all-purpose flour, the glycemic index is 85. This flour, the glycemic index is 45, so that makes a big difference. And so anyway, that's just some little fun facts. There's lots and lots of fun facts, but that's all I'm going to give you on that today. I'm going to let this continue to, let me look at it a second, to make the sponge. Yeah, it's not there yet. When it gets there, I think it's going to be there faster than 20 minutes though, because it's already getting little holes in it. So, but anyway, I will be back in just a minute, and we'll continue our bread making. Okay, this is ready. I don't know if you can see, let's see. Can you see bubbles in there? Looks all kind of holy. That's called a sponge. So our yeast is active. If yours doesn't look like this, then your yeast either got too hot, your liquid was too warm, or it was just dead. So that's what it needs to look like. I'll lift it up again, see if you can see it better. Okay, so now we're gonna add, I have half oil and half honey in this, and the little tip is if you pour your honey in this and then, pour your oil in first, then your honey, then the honey will come out very easily. So we're gonna pour this on top, and there we go. And I can tell there's just a little bit of honey left, but there we go. Okay. Now, I'm gonna use salt, put salt in here, and got the dog scratching at something on the floor. I have no idea what. Okay, so there's our salt. Again, I'm using Himalayan salt, but it's fine ground. Still has all those good minerals in it. Okay, so now we're not going to just dump all this flour into here. We're going to add it gradually. Let me put this splash guard on, and I'm going to add some right now. Okay, I've already spilled this, so let's see if I can shake that off. Okay. Remember, I'm doing a double batch. Okay. And I think I'll put this on because that's a lot of flour in there. So I'm going to turn it on and mix it. Take that off so y'all can see better now. Okay, so what we're looking for, and I've got some flour up here, what we're looking for, our mixer is gonna tell us when to stop adding flour. Just because a recipe says add 6 cups of flour or whatever, that doesn't necessarily go with bread. Weather has a lot to do with it. If you have real humid days, it's gonna require a different amount of flour than real dry days. So what we want to see happen, and from this point on, I'm gonna add flour gradually, maybe about a 1/4 cup at a time, something along. I'm not measuring, but not a whole lot. I want the dough to start coming away from the wall of the bowl, and that'll tell me, okay, it's time to stop adding flour. So that's the cool thing about this mixer, and the Nutrimil Artiste will also do the same thing. It will tell you, okay, I've had enough flour. So now we'll see how much more flour it needs. away from the wall a little bit. You know what? This time I may need all of this flour. There we go. I'm going to dump it all in today. Sometimes it doesn't need it all. That looks okay. Now, that right there, we've just mixed it. That's not kneading yet. If we started counting that time as kneading, it wouldn't be kneaded enough. But this dough looks pretty shaggy, I would say. It's kind of wet and it's sticky a little bit, and you might be tempted to add more flour to that. But with freshly milled flour, the flour takes longer to absorb liquid, and so if you add more flour right now and make it like a nice smooth dough like you would with traditional, bread flour or whatever, then your bread is going to end up being dry. So you don't want that. So I'm going to start kneading this now, and we're going to knead it. I'm going to knead it for about 6 minutes and see how it looks. Okay, it's been 5 minutes, and did you see the difference in this dough? I've got it set on number 3. I ran it on number 1 for just a minute or 2, and then I turned it up to 3, and I believe it's probably about done. It's cleaned the sides of the bowl, and it kind of changed colors a little bit. Now, a lot of people will test for a window pane, and I just mainly want to make sure it's good and stretchy. So I'm going to wet my hands. Because what I really want is a stretchy dough. So to me, this is pretty stretchy. So if it had like torn in the middle, I might would have maybe put it for another minute or so. But I'm gonna go with that. I'm not gonna worry and see if I can get a window pane. I'm just gonna go with nice stretchy dough. So what I like to do now, because and you can see it's got stretch, I want to let that rest just a few minutes, and you can see it's kind of still a little bit sticky, but that's okay. That's okay. We don't want it real dry. We don't want it real dry. You will have a much softer bread if there's a touch of stickiness to it. Wash my hands there. So now I'm gonna put the cover back on this, and I'm just gonna let this set about 10 minutes while I get out my mat, and because that'll just kind of relax. It's been working, the gluten's been forming. Now I just want it to relax a little bit, and it'll be easier to handle when I start shaping the loaves. So I'll be back in just a minute. Okay, we are ready to take this out. I have sprayed my mat with some oil. I'm going to smear it around, and that will help me get this dough out. My hand be kind of, it won't stick quite so easy. I'm going to just dump this out. That's a lot of dough. Okay, now, there we go. So, I know that I want my loaf pans. I use the USA pans, the bread pans, USA bread pans, the 1 pound size. Now, but I'm not gonna put 1 pound of dough in it, because if I put 1 pound of dough in it, it's only gonna be about this tall, and I like it to be big enough for sandwiches. So I put 1.5 pounds. If I can get 1.5 pounds, that's what I do. So 1 pound, 8 ounces. So that's why I have this scale. And so I'm gonna divide my dough in half, or kind of in half, and we'll go from there. So there's a pile of dough, here's a pile of dough. I'm gonna cut this in half, because I'm making, now if you're just doing a single recipe, this is what you would have right here. And you would just cut that in half and make your loaves. But I've doubled the recipe. So I got double the dough. So I'm gonna see how much this weighs. I've got it on pounds just because me and grams don't jive. Some people do everything in grams. Bless you if you do that. But my brain goes on tilt when I do that. So I just go for 1 pound, 8 ounces. And that's 1 pound, 9 ounces. So I'm gonna take a little off. 183, 1/8 exactly. Yay. So I'm gonna set that over there. And for some reason it added an ounce on there. I'm gonna tear it. There we go. And that's 1 pound, 11 ounces. So I'm gonna take some off. 198, 189, 183, whoops, 177, 18. There we go. 1 pound, 8 ounces. Now, if you have any dough left, like if this was, that's all I was gonna do, and I had this left, I would just shape this up, put it in a little tiny baking dish, and also bake it as a little extra loaf to eat when it's still warm. Because, you know, you're not supposed to cut the bread when it's still warm. But if you just put this little bit in a greased little pan, hey, there you go. You can just kind of shape it into a little loaf or something and do that. But I'm gonna add that to that and cut this in half because I'm gonna make hamburger buns. And I like to make hamburger buns about 3 ounces to a little, between 3 and 3.5 ounces. Okay, that's 1 pound, 12 ounces. That would have been a big loaf. And you know, some days, like it seemed to need all that flour today. I don't know why. And so I do have a little more flour in here, and it is gonna be heavier. Where some days, it's like I might have a 1/2 cup of flour left. It just depends on the humidity or whatever. Okay, that's basically 1 pound, 12 ounces too. So what I'm gonna do, first I think I'll just do my loaves. So we're gonna fold over. I'm gonna get these loaves going, and I just make into a ball. I'm cupping my hands. I don't want any kind of air pockets in there. And so if I see one, like I see one kind of trying to pop up, so I'm gonna mash it. Okay, so I'm making a ball. And I want to elongate it a little bit, and I'm making surface tension. I'm pulling down, making it really tight. And I can tell my hands are dry and this is dry, so I'm going to put a little more oil on here, just because it makes it easier to get your surface tight. So now, you usually spray Pam or something, recipes call for it anyway, spraying Pam on the top of your loaf. But I figure if I've got oil on here, I'm just gonna roll that into the oil, smear it, make sure I got it good and tight, and plop it in the pan. Now let's do the next loaf. And I'm gonna get it into a ball, cupping my hands good, get it tight. Okay, this one I heard a little bit of squish. That meant there was some air in there, so I'm gonna get that air out. I don't want air bubbles make a big hole in my loaf, but if it does, you know what, it's not the end of the world. So, it's still gonna taste good. Okay. Get some oil on there. There we go. Put it in my pan. Now, I'm gonna add a little more oil. There we go. And I probably should have taken my rings off. Okay. I'm gonna divide this. I'm gonna try to get, I'm just gonna divide right now into 8 pieces, and then I'll fix it how it needs to be. I want to go for 3 to 3.5, 3.5 ounces. So let's see what this weighs. That's 3 ounces on the dot. I couldn't do that again if I tried. So I'm going to say that one's good. Now this I know is going to be less than that. That's 1/8. That's 3/7 when I add the two together. 3/2. 3. So I'm going to use that. That's 3/9. 3 on the dot. Okay, so this is a way to bring your inner child out. Remember playing with Play-Doh? You're playing with Play-Doh. Okay, I have 8 3-ounce things, balls of dough. I could make a whole bunch more hamburger buns. I think, you know what I think I'm gonna do? I think I'm gonna save this dough and, well, let me see how much it weighs. That's 1 pound, 15 ounces. I think I'm just gonna make a giant loaf. I have a 2-pound pan. So, or do I have a 1 1/4 pound pan? I'm gonna stick this in a 1 1/4 pound pan, I think. Because even if I could make rolls with that, but that's a lot of rolls. I don't need any rolls right now. I mainly need to put some hamburger buns in the freezer. So that's what I'm gonna do. So I'll do that in a minute. But I know you want to know how to make hamburger buns. So we got these nice squishy balls of dough. And you know how I was trying to make surface tension on the loaves? You want to do the same thing, only you're just going to kind of make a ball, and then you're going to roll it, and you kind of cup your hands like this, and you roll and roll and roll. And you want a nice smooth ball with a tight top. And I'm going to lay it on my pan over here. You can't see it. I'll show it to you in a minute. And just kind of work with it. Gonna kind of make a ball and then roll it. I'm gonna make 8 hamburger buns. And like I say, I don't do this exact same way every time. I just want to get surface tension. So I'm keeping my hands under. There we go. I said I keep my hands under. I kind of curl my fingers under a little bit. And roll it around. And get a nice smooth ball. Okay, so let me show you what we have right now. So we have 8 balls of dough. But if we leave those balls of dough that way, when they rise, it's going to be a very thick hamburger bun. We don't want that. So I'm going to grease my hands and I'm going to smash down a little bit. And I'll show you just a second. Okay. Let's see. I'm just going to mash. I don't know if you can see. You probably can't see. Okay, these are nice and puffy. And I'm going to punch in right there. And it stayed slightly indented. That means I need to get it into the oven now because it's about out of rising. And if I let it go any longer, it's going to overproof and fall in the oven. So I'm fixing to put them in the oven at 350.